live.
We're good. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Kennebunkport Board of Selectmen meeting on May 8th at 6:05 p.m. The first item we'll deal with are the minutes from the preceding meeting. We got two on April the 25th. Everyone was here except Sheila.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? The minutes on the 26th of April?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, moving right along to the public forum. No, I was looking at Lee back there. I'll let Tracy go first. Good evening, Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill Leffler. I want to publicly thank and express my appreciation for all
Joe,
of the
could you
work
turn that mic on if you
done.
got to turn it on?
Turn the mic on.
Mayhem at the Board of Selectmen meeting.
I'll start over.
Please.
I'm Bill Leffler. I live at Goose Rocks, and I want to publicly thank all of the people who worked on Route 9 and the New Biddeford Road. It is a real delight and pleasure to travel on it now, and they need to be complimented. Secondly, Stuart and I and my wife last Wednesday were at Consolidated School, where they had the most delightful morning for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders learning social skills. And we spent the whole morning judging how well they shook hands, had eye contact, spoke to you directly. It was an inspiring morning, and I want the public to be fully aware of how wonderful our Consolidated School really is.
Completely agree, Bill. Thanks for
Thank
mentioning
you,
that. It was just an outstanding event, and I was delighted to see that the school is doing that. And it's really exciting.
Good evening.
Tracy?
So I just wanted to give our residents some election-related opportunities and deadlines that are coming up. There's going to be a presentation given by Secretary of State Matt Dunlap about ranked choice voting next Monday, the 15th, at MacArthur Library in Biddeford. And it's
Monday's the 14th, so is
oh,
it?
sorry, yes, Monday the 14th.
Okay.
Yes, from 4 to 6 at MacArthur Library in Biddeford.
It's going to take 2 hours?
I'm sure he could go on much longer than that. It's a rare opportunity to hear the newest information directly from Maine's top election official. And he's very entertaining. I just got back from a conference of 2 days with him.
Tap dances along the way.
Yeah, we'll see. So anyway, anyone who has any questions about ranked choice voting or would like to know how the process works, it's a great opportunity to hear about it right from the horse's mouth. And I also put a link on my town clerk website page to the Secretary of State's resource page regarding ranked choice voting, so people can go there to look at sample ballots. They show you how to mark the ballots and explain the process, so it's a really good, useful tool if people do have questions.
So how do they find it on the,
So if you go to the town's website,
Right.
kennebunkportme.gov, and go to the town clerk page,
Clerk
and then there's an
Under
elections.
departments, yep.
Yeah, under departments, go to town clerk, and then there's an elections page, and it's
Okay.
all right there.
great, thank you.
And also next week, on Tuesday, the 15th, that's where I got the 15th from, is the RSU 21 budget meeting. So anyone who wants to participate in that and hear what the budget numbers are going to be are encouraged to attend. And that will be at Kennebunk Elementary School at 7 p.m. And then also next week, absentee ballots are going to be available, so people can call and request their ballots over the phone, or they can stop into Town Hall anytime. You just have to be a registered voter if you're going to request over the phone. And then finally, just a reminder that the June 12th election is a primary, so you have to be enrolled in a party in order to get a ballot for the party races. So if you would like to change your party before the election, Friday the 25th is the deadline. You only have so many days before the election that you're allowed to do that. So the deadline for this election is Friday the 25th, and you must come to Town Hall and fill out a new voter reg application designating the political party that you'd like to be part of. And any questions, my phone number is 967-1610, and that's my direct line. think that's it.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tracy.
Tracy. Lee?
Hi, folks, Lee McCurdy.
We normally don't give out money in other business, by the way, or in the public forum.
Oh, come on now. I thank you for letting me squeeze in here, because I'm a little behind on things, and still trying to catch up. But yeah, I'm here trying to, I want to go with the one bid I have from Adam and Fogg to get the fuel system, management system hooked up at the pier.
Is that the one, the people we got, the other one from before, the one we have now?
Yes.
Right, and you've had
Yeah.
good luck with them, right?
Very good luck. They've
What's
been
on?
really good, and they're reasonable, and they have the equipment that we're looking for, too. The other vendors have similar stuff, but they all have a USB port. You gotta go out and manually put a USB port in and get the information from. This is automatically to your computer, and the town office will be able to access my information right from their desk. So.
Lee, did they say what the keys themselves will look like?
They're an electronic key. They're like plastic, a little square key that plugs in. You get one key, you can have gas and diesel on it.
Oh.
We'll be able to set limits on individuals for amounts of fuel they're allowed to get. And it's a pretty advanced system,
Great.
which will free up a lot of time for me, because I'm usually 2 or 3 hours doing paperwork in the morning, which I can get out in the boat and do a little more on the mooring situation.
Okay. In your letter, you did mention that because of the increased cost, you hadn't budgeted for a portion of it.
Well, the thing is, I budgeted for the equipment.
Right.
And I didn't add in the labor for it.
Right.
And I did budget to paint the chowder house, which,
Right.
which was, I budgeted 5,000 for that. And I'm asking if we can postpone that till the next budget and, put that money towards this.
Shingles falling off.
Alan?
No, it's fine, it is, it's holding well.
It
We
still,
can
it still looks pretty good.
It does,
There's a
yeah.
few spots, but we'll get on it.
We're all set. Yeah.
Okay, well then that sounds like you brought us a problem and a solution. Do I have a motion?
What are we looking for? The
We're looking for
11,000?
Authorization for the
$11,975.
All right, well, I moved that we expend $11,975 for the Cape Porpoise Pier to buy equipment for the fuel system.
Second. And you're authorizing the sole source with Adams and Fogg?
Oh, yes.
Correct.
You didn't hear me say that?
I thought I did, I was
I
just
must have
checking.
mumbled that, sorry.
I did it. I heard it.
Very well. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? It passed. Thank you very much, Lee.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, Lee.
Good night, Lee.
Sorry about
Good
the
night.
fancy
So that moves us to, the next item is to consider a renewal liquor license application submitted by the Peter Ciriello, DBA Edgewater Hospitality, the Edgewater Inn, 126 Ocean Avenue.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor? That
and
takes
the
care of that.
police chief, fire inspector, and the code enforcement officer
enforcement.
has signed off on it.
Right, we're good. Next, we'll be inviting Bob Mills to come up to the podium. He has volunteered to join the Shade Tree Committee, and we want to hear about him beforehand. And then we will have a vote. Good evening, Bob.
Good evening. All right, Pat said that I had to limit this to less than 30 minutes. I'll try to do that. Okay, I'm a two-time resident of Kennebunkport. Moved away for a while, saw the error in my ways, came back. And as far as my history of master's in computer science, did computer programming all my life, and just love being up here in Kennebunkport. And Pat urged me to join the Shade Tree Committee, which I am glad to do, and audited a meeting this morning, since I'm not officially yet. And there's a lot of work.
Well,
I've learned
that's
that.
true.
So,
Well, it's nice to have another volunteer.
Yeah, he's computer science, see what I mean? That says a lot to the people who run committees and how they keep track of things.
I don't know how that translates to trees, but I do love the big trees.
We count trees.
I can program that.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
So,
Second.
yep,
Okay, all in favor?
thank you
There
very
you go.
much.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you for volunteering.
Still in item 5, the next item we will discuss is a joint public hearing with the planning board to take public comment on the items to be voted on by referendum ballot at the June 12th, 2018 annual town meeting. Tom, do you want to step up as, confirm your quorum? And
We have a quorum of planning board members, and I'm commencing the joint meeting from a planning board standpoint.
Okay, I'll read through the amendments. The first one is to amendment to the administrative code regarding restructuring of the organizational chart of the town. This is just we're not taking a vote on this, we're just making everyone aware of what is going to be discussed. And the second, and if there's any comments that anybody would like to make with regard to any of these items, you are welcome to step up at this time. And the next one would be an amendment to the Cape Porpoise Pier Ordinance regarding supervision of the pier manager. I can see there is none, so the third will be an amendment to the Land Use Ordinance regarding growth area map. As you can see, a lot of these things are works in progress that we need to codify, and it has to be brought up to date, and this is the reason for doing this. Next is the amendment to the Land Use Ordinance, again, to clarify setbacks related to lot lines and rights of way. Next will be an amendment to the Land Use Ordinance regarding removal of reduction of lot coverage credit for semi-pervious materials. This, I think, was to keep us in line with the state's
DEP, yep.
DMP. So, an amendment to the Kennebunkport floodplain management ordinance, removing the floodplain permit fee and placing it in a fee schedule set annually by the Board of Selectmen. Next will be the amendment to the street ordinance, adding a naming system to section, a street numbering section, and a compliance section. This has gotten a lot of interest as we go through the town in various places.
We'll get more.
And we may hear some more going forward. Last, no, that's it.
That's it.
That's it, I'm sorry. Are there no comments? Then we will,
You might want to mention
Yes.
that the full wording of these are available on
absolutely, right, you're right. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said. Where is the information regarding this? Are we about to hear that?
No, it's on the town website.
It's on the
available in
town
its full
website.
detail.
Yes,
Beyond what I have here?
I
Yeah,
don't know
I
what
mean,
you
I
have.
I can give, she has the agenda. I can give
Yeah.
a brief overview if that's helpful
Okay, sure.
Of each one?
of each one.
That would be nice.
I just have to look for my other piece of paper here I've lost. So these are the full languages on the town clerk's website. If you go under the town clerk page on the left, it says elections and voting, and you can click on that. And at the bottom of elections and voting, she has every one of these documents that you can look at in full and entirety. But I will review them briefly for you tonight. And I had that one page right here and I lost it. But the first one is amendment to the administrative code, and the administrative code, question 1 and 2 on the ballot. And they are going to authorize amendments which address the organizational structure of town departments, focusing on the wastewater and public works division. Currently, wastewater is a separate department, and Highway Division and Public Works are separate. And it will create one department. Under Public Works, we'll have two divisions, wastewater and highway. Also, in another portion of the administrative code, it will place the Cape Porpoise Harbor Master under the supervision of the police chief in order to provide support and resources in the enforcement of local ordinances and management of the harbor. The Administrative Code Committee has reviewed these changes and are recommending them. They have voted in favor of them. So those are question 1 and 2 on the ballot. And that covers A and B on your agenda, the Cape Porpoise Pier Ordinance as well as the Administrative Code. Under the land use and the growth area map, the growth area map was created in 2010, and it shows properties that met the written definitions of growth, rural, and transitional. So back then, the town and the comprehensive plan looked at the town and had areas where they wanted to see growth happen and allowed for growth, additional permits on an annual basis in growth areas versus rural areas, because we have a growth permit cap in town. It did not consider at that time in 2010 the progression and expansion of public utilities such as sewer and water, because those growth areas were tied to where we had infrastructure in place. And since that time, we have had expansion. So the amendment that we are proposing allows the Growth Planning Committee to periodically review and update the map to reflect current infrastructure access, allow properties to be reclassified from one type would be rural or transitional to growth, or from rural to transitional, transitional to growth. And then we will update the map to reflect the current infrastructure access. That is item C. Item D is to clarify setbacks related to lot lines. This ordinance amendment removes confusing and contradictory language regarding setbacks from roads and right-of-ways. As a matter of practice, the Code Office has consistently interpreted structure setbacks to be measured from the edge of a road right-of-way. And while the ordinance supports the interpretation, there has been confusion when in places setbacks refer to the street, and in other places it refers to the right-of-way, and that can be very different.
Are there specific streets and right-of-ways that are being looked at?
It's town-wide. So if you had a house and you have to have a setback from the street, in one part of the ordinance it might say street, in another part of the ordinance it might say right-of-way. So do we measure from the tarred portion of the street? Do we measure from the right-of-way, which might be 33 feet from the center of the tarred portion? You see how it can be different, and it impacts those homeowners who have structures that have to meet that setback requirement. So this language would clarify what that setback requirement will be and use similar language throughout the whole ordinance. The other one is on the semi-impervious materials removal. Within the shoreland zone, driveways are calculated towards a lot's overall lot coverage restriction. Several years ago, many coastal communities, with the support of Maine DEP or Department of Environmental Protection, allowed lot coverage reductions when semi-pervious materials such as grass pavers were used. Remember those pavers that kind of have holes in them and the grass grows through them? So the state was allowing that, and we did too. After a trial period, DEP reversed their position regarding this practice. It was found that some communities were not consistently enforcing the policy, and in addition to finding that many contractors were improperly installing the alternatives. So DEP has since reversed that. We are no longer in compliance with DEP, which we need to be. So that is why we are reversing our position as well at the ordinance level. F is the amendment to take the floodplain permit fee out of the ordinance and have it be a separate fee. We've done that through a lot of the ordinances. Have the fee schedule be separated, and this is just another example where it's more easily amended by the selectmen in a vote than through a town meeting process. Not that there's a plan at this point to change the fees. And the last one is amendment to the street ordinance. So we had, that will be question 7 on the ballot. The street ordinance was adopted in January of 1997, which was over 20 years ago. And we were ahead of the state when we adopted our street ordinance. So since then, the state has come out with 4 editions of their addressing guidebook for local governments, and we are not in compliance with our current street ordinance. Because we came out before them, this amendment would allow us to be in compliance, and it would add a naming system section and a street numbering and compliance section to the ordinance. The Public Safety Committee has reviewed the proposed changes and recommend their adoption. So that's an overview of them, but people can find the specific language on the town website.
Was that helpful for you?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, okay, very good. Next item, Annie Cox, the coordinator of the coastal training.
You have to come out of that.
Okay, yes, well,
Oh, Barbara's headed to the podium.
uh-oh, stand by.
No panic. Barbara Barwise, member of the Growth Planning Committee, and just said that we had a unanimous vote for all of the land use amendments that are applicable. There is no disagreement with the comprehensive plan.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you.
You can now.
The planning board also, looked
Concurs.
over and had them and concurs. And I guess at this point, I'm going to move that we adjourn the planning board portion of this. Look for a second from one of my friends. Okay, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
It was fabulous. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So that wraps that up. Thank you. Next item is Annie Cox, the coordinator of the Coastal Training Program at Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve, to discuss the Coastal Business Resiliency Project. And I don't know if Annie is here tonight.
I
don't know.
The only thing I wonder is whether Annie thought we started at 7 for some reason.
I don't know.
And I haven't heard any.
Yeah, I haven't.
We can always reschedule it.
Yeah,
We can, yeah,
absolutely.
we'll take it for a future date, if she chooses to do so. Next, we're going to be considering authorization of 2 beach use agreements. So let Stu talk to that.
Me? Okay.
You're Mr. Goose Rock's Beach.
I suppose so. As I mentioned at a previous meeting, we have made the statement that we would welcome members of the plaintiff parties who have an interest potentially in joining the beach use agreement to just, let us know, and we authorize that the town manager receive those requests and pass them on to the town council, and then bring them before us on a case-by-case basis so that we could consider them, currently versus waiting all to the end of some process. So we have 2 that have come before the board this evening, and there are 2 parties that wish to be considered for inclusion in the beach agreement. And so, Lori, do you want to add something to this?
I would say we have received the signed documents from both the Coopers as well as the Shermans. And the documents are in hand. And so if the board is in agreement, then an authorization of the beach use agreements would let us move forward with the process.
Very good.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
I think it's a good thing to
It
do.
is.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's great. I was
Yeah.
encouraged, and hopefully, frankly, many more people will be like-minded. And again, I'm very much looking forward, as I'm sure others are, to the end of the process, and hopefully, everyone can continue going about the business of enjoyment at Goose Rocks Beach.
Right.
So,
Well, this was, to remind everyone, was an offer that has termination date of 15 June. So between now.
Still lots of time.
There's plenty of time. I mean, we're open for business.
Excuse me.
And I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that that was still an option. Okay, thank you. Next item is to award the bid for the Parks and Recreation Building Bond. The Parks and Recreation Building is underway and construction should be complete at the beginning of November. So in order to fund the construction, we are using reserve funds and a bond for $450,000 for 10 years. And this is the request that we have. Lori, did you want to speak to this before? Because there's some other detail that.
Yes, so we did put out the Parks and Recreation building bond. As you'll remember, we have $450,000 that we've been authorized to bond for up to 10 years. Construction has begun, and so we will be in need of the fund shortly. We had 4 banks that replied: Biddeford Savings, Camden, Century Bank, and Norway Savings Bank. The lowest rate was Camden National at 3.27%. And the selectmen have the option of, we could accept the bond where we have a payment up front versus a payment in arrears, meaning at the end of the first year. There is a substantial amount of savings between the two. For Camden, the interest would change from $84,832 over the life of the bond to $69,242 over the life of the bond, for example.
And that's the savings would be the $15,589.
Yes. And so if that is the pleasure, then we would prepare it. The payment wouldn't be due until our new fiscal year, and we have budgeted the funds in the new fiscal year, and so we certainly have them available to make that payment up front.
I think that's a good thing to do.
I do too.
You're obviously saving money. It's the right thing to do, so.
You're gonna have to pay it sometime, might as well do it.
That's right.
Well, pay as little as necessary, and that's, any comments from anyone about this?
No.
Nope, Camden National.
Yeah.
Camden National is the lowest bidder,
Yeah.
so I need a motion.
I move we go with Camden National and we make the first payment due on 7/18.
Second,
All in favor? There we go. Item 9 is to approve a street opening permit submitted by the Colony Hotel, 140 Ocean Avenue, to connect the pool drain to the catch basin.
So moved.
second.
All in favor? Oh, Mike, you want
I
to?
just want to say,
Yes.
I did make one, I didn't get quite clear with George Burr when I talked to him about it. It's also connecting some drainage from the Boynton House,
Okay,
next to the Colony there. That's the little house on Ocean, the first house on Ocean Avenue that they
but
own.
it's in the same drain.
Same drain.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any, back to the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry.
All in favor? That's approved. The next item is this, consider the Senior Advisory Committee. As you remember, we had the advisory committee that did a wonderful job of surveying the town, and their recommendation to the Board of Selectmen was to create a standing committee on senior issues. This is the subject for tonight's vote, so I think the options that we're looking at, because we've come back with a list of, I think, 5 items that would make the work much clearer for them, and it's what the selectmen would like to do. So if there's, well, I'll let Susan Boak, who was on the committee, speak to this. The
Hi.
idea, go ahead, Susan.
I'm Susan Boak. I'm the vice chair of the Ad hoc Senior Advisory Committee. And also in the audience is Bill Leffler, who was the chair of said committee. I spoke with Patrick this morning, and for most of the discussion, I thought it made perfect sense to forge a strong working relationship with the town manager and to work with town committees and town employees to get objectives completed. However, the term of the committee being 2 years maybe is something we need to consider further. Our strong recommendation was for Kennebunkport to become an age-friendly community, as is going on all over Maine. And AARP, who is the agent for the World Health Organization in this effort, has provided us with an overview of the process, which takes longer than 2 years. And so I'd like to provide this and see what we might.
Well, we were not going to vote on that tonight.
Right.
Just,
She's gonna give us.
go, yeah, pass it out.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's all right.
Okay.
We can do that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Nope, thank you.
I got enough paper over here.
Sorry, I don't really like papers.
You're not old enough.
Exactly.
So all I wanted to say was perhaps we can have further discussion on the issue,
Well, I
on this
think to-
particular issue.
Right,
Yeah.
to frame the desires of the board for this committee
Uh-huh.
is that you gather 5 to 7 people, keep it at a manageable, workable size. And in this 2-year period, we want you to look at 5 items, of which this is certainly one of them. And we will have a better understanding as you go along, and we can adjust what we need to do to meet the needs. The second item that I think is important is to educate citizens and promote programs and services that are available to seniors through the town departments and other governmental and/or nonprofit organizations. This needs to be brought together in a form that people can refer to. Next would be to evaluate the needs of residents by holding focus groups and listening to sessions and forums. This will give you information about what you need to be thinking about as you go forward.
Well, the survey's given us already
A
a
lot of
great
that,
deal of
right.
information.
Yeah, but this way, it'll be coming in a form that they can address and take into consideration. Okay, the next would be strengthening the relationships through the town manager with each of the town department to discuss survey data as it relates to their departments. Up till now, that was not available to you, but that is something going forward. And last, recommend to the Board of Selectmen any additional services, issues, or actions that you determine are needed in the community. So this sort of brings it all together so that we have something that we can deal with on behalf. You know, the study to now outlined a general problem, but now we're trying to get more specific. Have you got any thoughts on that, or
Yeah, I have a question.
step up to the podium?
My question is, why are you limiting the committee to 2 years rather than setting it up as most all of the other committees as an ongoing committee with rotating membership? 2 years, as you can see, looking at the age-friendly process, is really not going to address the full process. And I'm confused as to why you're limiting it to 2 years at this point.
Well,
Can I just speak to, since it was my recommendation, I mean, there are other short-term committees. I mean, they appointed a housing committee, that's a 2-year committee, and they've appointed a short-term rental committee that is about a 9-month committee. I think the process that has been laid out is not to become an AARP age-friendly, which you would need the time for, but consider the benefits and then make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. So
Yes, well, we already have done that in our report, but it strikes me
So,
that
so
this
Bill,
is-
I'm still talking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just want to why I had suggested the 2 years to the board, and it's a board decision to make, certainly. But I certainly had seen in the presentation that there was a recommendation. I don't know that the board heard all that they needed to make that decision, and that's a board decision to make. And that there was more work that needed to be done, but having a standing committee, as we have a number of committees in town, whether the board was there yet or not, to make that determination whether this was work that needs to be done, and then maybe we evaluate what we want to do, whether that changes direction and changes mission. Because certainly, as you've demonstrated, there's a lot of work in the first year that's not work you would necessarily do in later years. And so that changes the mission of the committee. And so when they set up a committee and they give direction, as all these committees are arms of the Board of Selectmen, they are trying to give definition to what the committee's authority and action should be. So that's why, to me, there still seem to be development work to do, which may be different work than is what's needed down the road. It doesn't mean that the committee wouldn't continue in a different format, but trying to create an avenue by which you can do the work that needs to be done now.
Well, that, I think, wraps it up in the sense that if there's a need for additional time, when we reach that point, the decision will be to continue on, Bill. But at this point, there's not a consensus that we're going to have this forever. It depends on what the committee is going to be.
Well, my
involved in.
reaction, unfortunately, Pat, is in 2 years, you don't think we'll have any folks over 65, and so
No,
2
that-
years.
I don't know how you got to that conclusion.
Well,
No, I think- no, I think what you-
that's what a 2-year limit message tells me, that it's not ongoing as the Shade Tree Committee is, as the Goose Rocks Beach Committee is, as a number of other committees which we have in town, where there are concerns that are of an ongoing nature. There'll be I gather there's a meeting shortly dealing with affordable housing. Certainly, this is a part of what a committee of this nature might be wanting to look at, and it's really of a long-term nature, and a 2-year limitation, I think, sends the wrong message.
Well,
I don't think the intention, Bill, is to necessarily
Right.
impose a 2-year limitation. I don't think limitation is the right term. Think of it more like if you're starting a construction process and you have a construction loan and a mortgage. 2 different things, 2 different creatures that do 2 different things. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to continue on beyond the construction phase. This piece, I think, was envisioned by the board as being the construction phase, if you will, of this committee, its role, its mission, its purpose, and building that. And then coming afterwards, at the end of that period of time, and saying, okay, here's all the stuff that's been accomplished, and these are the things that moving forward on an every year, every month, every week basis, a committee might need to accomplish moving forward, and this is how we recommend structuring that, and then that would be the creature that perhaps takes a longer-term life. Is kind of how we were thinking.
All right, if that's the case, I would very much like to see somewhere in the material the message that this is only to start the process, and that the selectmen believe that it is going to be an ongoing sort of thing and not just 2 years.
Well,
Because 2 years is a message. And if you don't want 2 years as that message, then there needs to be something more said.
well, I think we did cover that in the saying that at the end of the 2 years, it's certainly we're open to a need for going beyond that, Bill.
Well,
It's not trying to cut it off at 2 years.
Let's be more affirmative, I guess is the term, that we foresee the need or something of that sort, so that the other message doesn't supersede.
Well, I'm glad we're having the discussion, because we don't want people to be confused
Well,
like this is 2 years, we're going to give it a shot and then forget about
Yeah,
it.
well,
not
that's
good.
what I'm concerned about, that some folks will get that kind of a message.
So
And
perhaps-
that's what I'm hoping won't
Perhaps item
occur.
number 5 could be expanded to somehow incorporate what you're saying. Right, item number 5, recommend to the Board of Selectmen any additional services, issues, or actions that they determine are needed in the community. And one of those things may very well be what a long-term standing senior committee
Well-
might look like.
well,
And so
then-
if you put that into number 5, then it becomes
Then,
part of the.
then if you can add those few words, I think that would clarify greatly.
I have no problem with that. Is that, someday you'll be old enough to,
What's that?
someday you'll be old enough to think about these things.
I don't know,
better hurry
I
up
have
and start
issues
thinking.
with the whole committee, not the work that they're doing, but it's so specific to a specific group. We have so many people who are retired here. We need young people, we need to help families be here. We've got enough old people, and I say that because I'm headed there.
All right,
And I know that doesn't, but, you know, I mean, let's work to make this a viable town for everybody. And this is so specific that it bothers me.
well, it's 30% of the population, which I think is a significant
It
number.
absolutely is, and it shouldn't,
Well, then-
that's, it's
then that's
scary in
why-
and of
This is
itself.
why I'm thinking that the discussion on affordable housing is extremely important. It's another facet of developing who we are and who we attract as a community. And so that people can say, my goodness, the folks in Kennebunkport are looking at so many different facets of their community to make it as strong as possible. And that's what I'd like to see coming
Well, I
coming
think
out of
that's what we're
affordable.
trying to do
Yeah.
with short-term rentals and with the housing and trying to work with Habitat for Humanity. I have no problem giving you 2 years, but I don't want to see this go on indefinitely.
Well, I don't
I-
think, you know, Ed, if I may, it may be premature for that kind of a conclusion to be arrived at. I mean, I think that, you know, what we're spelling out here as a forward mission, I mean, part of it, a huge piece of this is to come back before us in a couple of years, let us know what's been accomplished, and then let us know what's yet to be done, or what has been uncovered that is a far-reaching, long-term, there could be great value here. And-
Oh, I
and think-
agree, but here we are, we haven't even established anything, you know, we gave them the year, and now they want 5.
Well, I don't think there's any, rather than throw out
I'd
numbers,
say we give them 1 year and give them another year, see where it goes, and continue on that and see how this progresses. I think that if we do it that way, we may get better results. And
it is an all-volunteer committee. I want to remind people of that. So to make it onerous,
Tell you what, we'll drop
it's
their
not
pay, Ed.
helpful.
yeah, that isn't my point.
However, even the Housing Committee, which we all know is important, has a 2-year time frame. Because at the end of that time, we've got to come up with a plan going forward. And then the committee sort of steps back or goes away as you set up a structure to handle it. That's the kind of thing, you know, there's no intent to cut you short. It's just you got to come together in a way we can focus
It's
on
to
it.
focus on a
Right.
date with a deliverable, and then a path forward from that deliverable. And I think that if we incorporate the language that I discussed into number 5, everyone gets to the same place. You know, we understand that there is a very real and long-term need here. And I think in the 2 years that you initially will be given to charge forward and do all of the heavy lifting, which is really what happens in the first couple of years, you'll come back before us and say, hey, this is all the things that need to be done. Here's what we've done, lots of heavy work. And then moving forward, the committee can be comprised of X number of people, and these are the specific things that might add value to the community. And I think that at that point,
That's
you'll
the
find-
sort of wording I'd like at the end, so that there is this sense of not cutting it off, if you
I
will.
always thought that was the path we were on to begin with.
That's,
anyway.
everybody thought that's sort of, I know you've got something to add
I
to
see
that.
what you're.
I just wanted to say that the only reason I brought this up, because the age-friendly process is age-friendly for all age groups. It's not just a focus on the senior population. And so it's important to the
But
town
this
as
is
a
a
whole.
senior committee, so I do appreciate you're bringing that forward, because perhaps that was not clear.
And the way it was formulated now, it didn't seem like we would be able to start with the age-friendly process. that was my concern.
Well, I think we're on the same path. I really do.
Yeah, there's no disagreement, it's just you're
Okay.
kind of concerned about the good. Do you want to state those words again to add to?
You know, I'm sure that Arlene's
So
been
I-
writing diligently.
I have recommend to the board any additional services, issues, or actions that they deem are needed in the community, including the purpose and mission of a possible future standing committee. Is that what you're thinking?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. All right, that leaves us at the, I got so excited. But you understand that we're talking about 5 to 7 people, you know, that going forward, you can work with in a productive fashion, so. Where are we on here?
Other business, number 12.
No, we need
Oh.
to vote to do this.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I need a vote to
So moved.
extend them for 2 years. Any
Wait a minute,
second?
they're already,
second it.
we already gave them 2 years. You've been on it for 2 years already?
No, they've only been on it for
No,
a
they
year.
haven't. This was just a,
The committee's expired at this point.
Time flies when you're having
So
fun, but
now
it
you're
hasn't
off,
been 2 years.
you have to authorize a new committee.
yes. That's
That
what
was
we
an
did.
ad hoc committee, and this is.
It seemed like
They
yesterday.
were ad hoc. Now
Times
they've,
have
now
flied.
they've grown into the 2 years. They're the
Okay.
terrible twos, and we're looking forward.
So I would move to impanel this committee as discussed previously, and with the language amended as you've read into the record, Lori.
In
Second.
accordance with the memo presented.
There we are, brilliant.
And it has.
And it
been-
will be a 5 to 7 member committee.
And it will be, as I hopefully made clear. All in favor? Thank you.
So can I just ask one
Yes.
clarified question?
Yeah.
So on the membership, are we first going to go back to the previous members and ask if they would still like to be on the committee?
Yeah, I've asked Susan
Why
to.
not?
Don't we
Yes.
have some that
I'm
no
just
longer live in
confirming.
town now?
Yes,
So,
Dean Ariana.
Dean has
Yeah.
moved out of town, and so I am assuming you would, there's no requirement to serve on the committee that you live in town, but I'm assuming that you would prefer to have
I
residents in
would
town.
think for this particular committee, it
Yeah,
would be
appropriate.
desirable.
I'm just asking,
Yeah.
yes.
But I wouldn't exclude anyone from the room who has something to add.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments from anyone attending tonight on this subject? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we voted to do this,
Yes.
so I think we're finished.
We're good.
Okay, just want to make sure. Any other business?
Summer meeting
Discussion of the summer meeting schedule. Laurie, you want to talk to about?
Yep, in the past few years, the board has opted to do one business meeting a month during the summer months and done a warrant signing meeting on the second meeting of the month. And so I've given you a calendar. The meetings in June are June 14th and 28th, and in July, they're the 12th and 26th, and in August, they're the 9th and 23rd. So I'm asking if the board plans to do that again this summer, and if so, what dates are the official meetings so we can coordinate the work that needs to be done?
Well, I think you're also looking for a start time on the particular date.
Yes, yes.
And so we've got 3 months, June, July, and August. Obviously, in June, we're going to have 3 meetings, and that includes the town meeting. And what we should consider is what would the start time be?
6 is fine with me.
I love it.
Perfect.
That's,
Really?
You said you're gonna pay me
Don't
off,
ask
so
him.
yeah, 6 is fine. You're gonna buy me an ice cream.
I'm losing
Hold you to
control.
that.
Don't poke the bear.
I know.
Okay. So does that start time of 6 continue for July and August?
That's fine with me.
Perfect.
I don't wanna be the
awesome.
rotten apple on the barrel.
Yeah, but you know,
All right, we will
Wouldn't wanna start
continue
without you,
at
though.
6.
Idea.
Now, mind you, the second meeting in, what would be the last meeting of the month in June, July, and August is planned to be a day meeting. So it would be a short meeting to sign warrants, and it would be done at the town hall.
If that's the pleasure of the board.
Well, this is the direction I'm hoping we go. So,
In the past, that is similar to what you have done.
and that, because that's what we've done in the past.
Say that again now,
So moved.
it's the
You've
second,
done the night meeting, the first meeting of the month,
right,
and the day meeting, the
and a warrant
second
meeting
meeting.
the second.
Second meeting.
Brilliant. Love it.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Yes. Second,
Second.
third.
All in favor? There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you. Any other business coming up? Laura, you got anything you want to bring up? Ed?
No.
Sheila does?
I-
You wanna mention
Go
that?
ahead.
You want me to go first?
Yes, go ahead.
First, I'd like to thank the firemen. We went to a fireman recognition dinner last night. They did an excellent job
I always like that.
recognizing the outstanding men and women who are volunteers in our fire department. And also, it was very nice, the chaplain read off the firemen and women that we've lost over the past year, and it was significant, and it was, it was very meaningful for us. So, thank you, we had a wonderful time. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is, at our Kennebunkport Business Association meeting the other morning, I was questioned about the parking lot being open in April. It seems that every year, the parking lot gets opened earlier and earlier, and it greatly affects the downtown businesses, especially this time of year. There's not a whole lot of outside guests, outside tourists this time of year. So the restaurants and the shops are usually used by the local people. And it's the local people who don't want to pay at the parking lot. And so it really affects their, especially their lunchtime dinners, but lunchtime, the lunch menu, but also the dinner portion. And it causes some of our local people to, instead of coming downtown, to drive elsewhere where they can get free parking or whatever. What the KBA would like the town to do would be to alert them to changes that are taking place in the town on a more timely basis, so that if they had known, for instance, that the parking lot was going to open mid-April, they would like to be able to respond, and they kind of question why.
What would a response look like? Just curious.
Well, that's something we need to
The
work
response
on.
would be, why are you opening it in April? What is it costing the town? What is the town making from the parking lot? Is it worth it? In the past, it's opened on Mother's Day. Before that, it opened Memorial Weekend. It seems to be creeping up. And I know there's people who would like to see it open year-round, but, it's just not the temperament of the town. It's not what it was, there for. So, anyway, the KBA would like to be alerted. They would like to have an input if they can, and that's about it.
Well, I want everyone to know that today we received a letter from Ashley Paget, who's president of the Kennebunkport Business Association, outlining these issues and concerns and so forth. And so the response from the town will be put together, but we won't comment further on it tonight. We need to staff the questions and the answer and see what is going on. So I just wanted to let her know that we've got the letter and that we will be getting back to everyone.
It would be, for instance, nice if there is a change next year, if somebody, one of us or Lori, comes to a KBA meeting and lets them know and gets their reaction, and if they have any comments, they can make them on a timely basis.
Certainly a reasonable request. Okay.
Thank you.
So that's the direction that we'll be going in. There's no vote on this at this time. This is simply a matter that we're taking under advisement, so. Any other business
I'm all set.
Okay.
Me.
I have other business.
You have other business.
So the Finance Subcommittee for the RSU, as well as members of the towns of Kennebunk, Arundel, and Kennebunkport met this morning to review the schools committee's proposal that they have added 4 school resource officers to the coming year's budget. And of course, they would need law enforcement agencies to hire those police officers. And their goal is to have a police officer in every school. So that would be 6 in total in the 3 towns. The question will, of course, be a part of the budget process for the school, as Tracy announced, which will be next week, and then the vote in June. The town would be responsible, if they hired a police officer to serve as an SRO, to cover 25% of the salary and benefits, as well as their training costs. That is not a cost that we had built into the FY19 budget, as this is coming at the end of our budget process. However, because of the timing, et cetera, it is something that would probably impact the FY19 budget minimally. When I say timing, by the time you hire someone and they start in the school will likely cover the clear majority of that cost for that first fiscal year. The other item that came up was there are federal COPS grants, which are community officer policing, and those are normally annual federal grants. This year, the grant process has changed a little bit in the Fed's focus, but we certainly could apply for those to fund potentially the police officer for the first 2 years. However, the grant application is due by June 7th, which means that we would need to begin work on that very soon. So we just wanted to talk to the Board of Selectmen, certainly get some kind of direction, so if we know whether we should begin working on that application. Certainly when you hire someone and add them to your force, it is an addition for future years. This is not a capital item we're talking about. And I think that, one of the things we do struggle with is having enough police officers in the summer months. I mean, our population increases dramatically, and we try to staff in accordance, but we also have this big decrease in population in the winter. So we tend to be somewhere in the middle of those two, which leaves us very shorthanded in the summer months, especially if someone is out for an extended time. So in this case, having a school resource officer that would be available for the summer months would certainly benefit the town without having to take on a full year-round police officer. There has been a lot of support, I would say, at various meetings for this idea of having a school resource officer in every school. But at the end of the day, whether it's the county or Kennebunk or Kennebunkport, someone has to hire these officers to make this come to conclusion. Stuart and Alan were there at the meeting. I don't know if they have anything to add, but I'm looking for some direction from our board.
I think we should definitely fill out the application.
Yeah, for sure.
The COPS application.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. It was, the meeting was more informative than, substantive in terms of decision-making. It was, the RSU telling us their thought process, how they arrived at it, what their thinking is in terms of doing it. We were reminded, obviously, that from a process perspective, our choice-making doesn't necessarily start until further downstream. But the idea, and it seems to me to make a lot of sense, that if we were to participate in this, there is a great advantage, as Lori says, to the summer bump in staffing. And so my initial thought on the matter was not unfavorable in moving forward this. I concur with Alan. I think having the chief submit, or Lori submit a COPS grant application makes absolute sense. And I would, suggest that we move forward with the notion that we would be an active participant in that.
In addition to that, I think if everyone looks into the issue of having that person in the schools, it's beginning to grow across the country, just as a safety factor. So I think it is a prudent thing to do, and starting with a filing for the grant, obviously, and how we assimilate the costs and so forth going forward will have to be worked out.
There's a lot to it, though, that's beyond just they're not a security guard necessarily. I mean, while they serve that purpose, there's a lot more to school resource officers than just the police and the law enforcement piece. There's a whole social component to it that adds value to the relationship between the police departments and the community and the children, most especially, obviously. So there's, beyond the fact that you have a person, a law enforcement official in these different buildings, that's only one of several things that they're actually delivering to that process. And SROs, I think, have a really strong place in that. So it's not just about putting an armed guard at the schools. It really isn't that. It's a lot more than that.
Well, they interact with the kids.
Right. They interact with the children, right. Dave?
This is an issue that was discussed at the York County Budget Committee last night at the county level. Additional SROs for those communities that don't have police departments or don't have SROs right now. My question is, if you add 4 SROs to RSU 21, does that cost for those 4 people be distributed according to the way we distribute the school budget?
Yes.
And then who manages those 4 SROs? Would one of those be managed by?
The hiring entity, as I understand it, would.
Yeah, so the school would be picking up 75% of the direct cost. So if we had 400,000, just for easy numbers, 300,000 would be for the school to pick up, and it would be in that formula that you talked about. The additional 100,000 or 25,000 per officer would be a cost by that hiring agency. They are still police officers under a law enforcement agency, and they are supervised and managed by that entity.
And who would manage the SRO that works at Consolidated School?
Well, if it's a Kennebunkport police officer, we would manage that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
We currently have one, a Kennebunkport police officer who's at the middle school of the Kennebunks right now, and he's managed by Craig Sanford, even though he's working in a school that's in Kennebunk.
He spends a couple hours
At Consolidated too, yes, that's right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions with regard to that? You had anything else?
Do you have guidance that you need from us at this point?
I heard people said it makes sense to move forward and apply for the grant, and people are in favor of this process.
Right.
And I think at some point in the future, depending on what comes out of the next couple of weeks, it makes sense to bring the budget board in, I think.
Absolutely.
And inform them as well. Although they don't need to take action right now, I think it's good to keep them up to speed, so there would not be surprises next year for them.
Very good, okay. Then the next would be to approve the May 24th, 2018 treasurer's warrant.
Second.
All in favor? And next, we're going to go into executive session pursuant to MRSA 1, paragraph 405-6A, to discuss personnel issues. So that brings the open portion of the meeting to an end.
Good night, Ma.
See ya.
See ya. Good night, take care.
What's that? I don't think that's what I said exactly.